Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to be making creamy tomato basil soup with some homemade sourdough croutons and a sauteed chicken salad. So we're going to start with our soup. I'm going to use one big yellow onion and we're going to give this a nice little dice up and saute it for our creamy tomato basil soup. So I'm just cutting off the ends and then I'm going to remove this big outer skin just because it's a bit chewy and it doesn't cook up as nice. And we're just going to chop it in half. And then I'm going to go down about 5 slices and just do kind of a small dice on it. And the same with my other half. And we'll chop this through. And our tomato basil soup is a really, really simple soup. We're just going to be using, onions, tomatoes, basil, and like chicken broth, and a little bit of olive oil. So I put about a tablespoon of olive oil in there. And we're going to turn our Dutch oven on and we're going to start caramelizing our onions right here. And I always get a few that jump out. Perfect. And then we're going to put in some minced garlic. So I'm just going to be using some just pre-minced garlic. But if you have fresh garlic at home, it's about 2 to 3 cloves. We're going to use about a teaspoon of this. I finally used up my last garlic container. I feel like you have this garlic forever before you get through it. So on to our new one. And let me get a spoon and we're going to give this a quick stir just to make sure we coat all of the onions and garlic with the olive oil so it will cook up nicely. There we go. And we're going to let this nice start to sear and things. And we're going to prep our tomatoes real quick. And then we're going to move on to doing our sourdough croutons because those will need to bake in the oven for just a second. So I do have my oven preheated to 400 degrees. And right now I have a bunch of like ends to some sourdough bread and we're baking new loaves tonight. So a great way to use up your ends of it is just to turn them into some delicious croutons. And so the croutons will be great for both the soup and for the salad that we're going to be making. So I'm going to just go through and I'm just going to take out the little core out of each one of these so that when we toss them in there to saute, we won't have any of these hard chunks because these don't ever reduce down and they are really chewy. So I'm just sticking the tip of my knife in here and just kind of giving it a little twirl. Perfect. And for my tomato basil soup, I leave the skins on. I know a lot of people like to take, the skins off of them, like do a quick boil, but I find that the skins just puree it well, just nice, give it a little bit of a thicker consistency. So I leave them on and I don't de-seed them or anything like that. Makes it a lot easier and quicker to make a good soup too. There we go. So I've got all of my little things out. Turn mine down to about a 7 on my stove and just give it a quick toss. And then all I'm going to do with these tomatoes is I'm going to quarter them. So we're going to be blending them so you don't have to chop them up really small. We're just going to want to saute them for a little bit. There we go. And we've got a few more to get through, and then we're going to start with our sourdough bread to make our yummy, yummy croutons. Perfect. Okay, while our onions are starting to caramelize and heat up, we're going to take and cube our sourdough scraps over here. So as you can see, I think we have scraps from 4 different loaves, and we're going to turn them into delicious croutons, which is great if you're constantly baking bread. This will be great to do it. So we actually have, this was our tomato basil bread that we made. This one was our black pepper and Gouda, and these two were traditional sourdough loaves. So you kind of want to cut them down into about 1-inch cubes. You don't want them to be super huge because think about like the croutons that you normally have on your salad. They're not super huge. So we're going to give these some nice slices up, and you don't have to make them perfect cubes. Just kind of a rough chop is fine. But we want about 6 to 8 cups of bread cubes, so I think these things will use it up. For making our sourdough, old bread is the best. You don't want to use fresh bread because it has too much liquid in it, just natural hydration in it. So the older the bread or the more stale the bread, the perfect for making croutons. So we've got here, and I'm going to cut this guy in half, and we'll go through. This is also like, you could use this to make homemade stuffing. If you also had a lot of extra bread left, you could do that as well. I know a lot of people who will take their old bread and just cut it up and then keep it in the freezer until they have a good amount, and then you can make delicious stuffing for turkey or whatnot. So we're going to cut these. And again, not super huge chunks, because for the salad, you'll want that. And the soup, you know, those can take a little bit bigger ones. So we've got, and what will be nice about these croutons is because we have some different flavored sourdoughs in here, they'll all have kind of like a unique flavor in it as well. And this is just nice to get rid of some of this, because tonight we'll be baking up the sourdough loaves we were prepping yesterday. We have our plain sourdough as well as a Parmesan and oregano one. So I'm a bit excited for those tonight. And let me give this a quick stir. Get them caramelizing up nicely. We can see they're already starting to get a kind of golden color to them. We want all the onions and the garlic to get their flavor out before we add in the tomatoes, because the liquid from the tomatoes will just stop the caramelization process. So we want to let them shine first in the pot. And then this was our sun-dried tomato and basil bread. And this bread here is about, it's like on its last leg, about a week old. I think I made it right before we went out of town this weekend. So it didn't get eaten up as much. And then we made some fresh loaves. But they'll make lovely croutons. And cut through here. If you had just a plain sourdough bread and not like these ones that are more savory, you could also save them and make like a French toast with them, or like a bread pudding. But with the savory, you're kind of stuck to using it for either croutons or like stuffing. There we go. I will say this one's cutting up lovely. And we're almost done. And this will make, the beauty of this is croutons, you know, you kind of bake out any liquid of it, and then you just keep it in an airtight container, and they'll last for a good week or two before kind of going stale. So it's a nice little thing to have, and we'll be able to have them with our salads. So here are our bread all cubed up. Let me grab my big bowl. I'm going to give this one more stir. There we go. So, and then since our onions and our caramelized, I'm going to toss my tomatoes in real quick, and we're going to start to let them simmer in with the onions, and then we will get to tossing our croutons. So I'm just going to give them a good stir, make sure their onions are coating all the tomatoes as well. Perfect. Turn it down just a notch. Now, let me grab my seasonings. I want oregano, olive oil, garlic, salt, and pepper. I'm just going to bring them over here. So we need to give these a good toss. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a little oil mixture in here, and then we're going to toss our breadcrumbs. So you need about 4 to 6 tablespoons of olive oil to coat your breadcrumbs, because that's what's going to give them a nice crunch. And then we're going to use about a teaspoon of black pepper and a teaspoon of oregano. And then I like my croutons a little bit on the more of the salty side. So we're going to use closer to a tablespoon of garlic salt. And then we're going to give this a quick whisk to mix it up. And then we're going to just toss our croutons in this seasoned oil. And then we'll lay them out on parchment paper and let them bake for about 15 minutes at 400 degrees. And we'll toss halfway through. So we're going to put our bread all in here, and then we're just going to toss it. Here we go. And the trick is you want to just try to get everything coated so that it has just a nice little crunch, because otherwise it won't give you that nice crunch on your crouton. So don't be afraid to go in here with the hands, and we're just going to really kind of coat everything with that seasoned oil. And that's going to give you just a little extra punch and a crunch in our croutons. And I'm just kind of just twisting my hands and kind of smushing it down in the oil and really getting everything nicely coated. And these are going to be so delicious. One of those things like when you go to those nice restaurants and they make their own croutons. Oh, it's just so good. Okay, so you can see they've got like a slight little wetness to them. That's from the oil. They have all their seasonings on it. So now we're going to lay them out on a baking sheet. I'm going to put a layer of parchment paper down. That way it will just be easy cleanup. I am a big fan of using parchment paper. It just makes things so much easier to clean up afterwards. And, you know, when you have a big family that makes a lot of dishes, it's nice to minimize the cleanup. So here is our sourdough breadcrumbs. And now we just want to spread them out and try to make sure you have none like on top of each other as much as possible. That way they can all kind of crunch up and dehydrate in the oven and bake on their own. Okay, we're gonna go pop these in the oven. I have it set to 400 degrees and we're gonna bake them for about 7 minutes. Then we'll flip them and bake them for another 7 minutes. So we're gonna put these perfect right on top. And then I'm going to set my timer so I don't forget to come back here for 7 minutes. Now I'm going to give my hands a nice wash because they're coated in oil. And then we're going to be using this bowl for our salad. So just give it a quick rinse out from the things. Okay, let's give our tomatoes and our onions a quick toss in here. Beautiful. Okay. And then we are going to chop up some basil and we're going to toss it in there so that can start to cook. And then we'll add some broth and we'll let that simmer. So I've got a big batch of fresh basil here. I'm a big fan of the more the better with tomato basil soup. We're going to get rid of these stems because those will just be chewy and they don't add any extra flavor or benefit. So I'm just going to pull off all of these. And the smell of fresh basil is just wonderful. This is a great thing to do if you have, like, I have a couple basil plants growing right now, which I have loved fairly much. And now I was like, oh, I got to give them a break. But if you have a lot of basil growing, tomato basil soup is so great to do with it. The only bad part about it is my basil goes crazy in the summer, and summer is not really a soup time. But I do make a lot of homemade pestos with it. But the fresh basil just adds a nice touch to the soup that I feel like dried basil cannot do. So we're going to go through and give this a nice mince up so we don't have any really long leaves. That just means that, you know, it won't get stringy. And we're going to let this cook and simmer. We are going to be blending this, so it will all get a little bit blended anyways. Get some of those big sticks out. And perfect. Go put our fresh basil in. I'll scoop off any of the extra down here. Perfect. And I'm going to wipe my hands. We'll give this a nice toss into the stew. Perfect. And then I'm going to go grab my chicken broth for my better than bouillon, and a nice big cup, because you could use straight up chicken broth, but I like to use better than bouillon because I can add a little bit more, give it a little bit more flavor. Now, the tomatoes will be making most of the flavor and the juice liquid for this, but we are going to add just a little bit more liquid. You don't want to add too much liquid because it will really water down your soup. So I'm just going to add enough to kind of cover the tomatoes, which is probably going to be about 1 to 2 cups, not too much. There we go, a little bit more. So I added about 2 cups of water to our things, and now I'm going to add a nice big scoop of better than bouillon, like the chicken better than bouillon. You could use vegetable if you wanted to keep it in like a vegetarian thing, but I think the chicken works well with the soup. And we're going to just mix it in. That's going to give most of the salty flavor to our soup. I like to use this instead of actual salt because it just has a nicer little flavor profile. And we're going to just let this simmer for a little bit until our tomatoes are nice and soft. Then we will puree it to make our delicious creamy tomato basil soup. It's very simple and easy. Now let's prep our chicken for our salad, and then we'll make our homemade dressing. So I'm going to use my smaller knife and my smaller cooking board for the chicken, so I don't have some cross-contamination here. I've got 2 boneless, skinless chicken thighs, and I'm just going to cut each one in half, to make them thinner. And then I'm going to slice them up because we're going to want them to saute up quickly in our pan. And that way they remain nice and tender and they don't dry out. So you don't want to have super huge chicken chunks when you're sauteing, because otherwise you have to cook them longer and they won't be as nice and juicy and tender. So we've got this breast cut up. And then again, I'm going to kind of essentially like you're butterflying it, but you're going to go all the way through. And perfect. Just makes for nice thinner cuts. If you have any like pieces of fat or skin, just cut those off because those will just be chewy and they add no flavor to the chicken. And get this, little stringy things. I know they always say boneless, skinless, but there's always a little like fat chunk or something on these. And those just never cook up nicely. They're chewy. They're not great. So always, if you see it, it's going to be the whitish yellow thing on your chicken breast. Just cut that off and discard it. There we go. And we'll slice these. Should be all the way through. Perfect. So this soup and the salad was going to be it's going to be for 4 people today. So 2 big like breasts is more than enough for 4 people plus the soup. It's a soup and salad type of day. Give a quick wash. And then we're going to toss this chicken with a little bit of seasonings. We've got some Worcestershire sauce. This is going to pair with the natural fat in the chicken and just leave it to be nice and tender. You need just about a tablespoon of that. You don't need too much. And then we're going to be using some Mrs. Dash's table blend. We're going to use, it looks like I have a teaspoon left of this, so we'll use all of that. This is a salt-free thing. It just has, what does it have in it? Like onion, black pepper, parsley, celery seed. It's just a good all-around spice. I love it. And then a little bit of garlic salt to season it up. And then I'm going to give it a good toss. And in just a second, we will saute these up. I used about a half a teaspoon of garlic salt. I'm gonna give this chicken a good toss, and we'll saute it after a minute or two once it's nice and marinated for our
you
salad.
have a question? Do you serve the food you cook to your family instead?
Yes. So we'll be having this for lunch, and it'll be for lunch for my husband and I, my parents, and then my little ones, they're taking a nap now, so I typically make them a lunch earlier, but a lot of times my 3-year-old wake up and he smells the food and he's like, ooh, I'm hungry, I need it. So yes, all the food we make is food we eat for our family. I do not believe in waste or doing stuff for show. It is what we're gonna eat every day. And we do have a large family to feed, so there's 7 to 9 of us every single day to feed. So we go through a lot. But I hear our croutons are ready to flip, so let's go over there. I'm gonna grab my spatula and we'll pull it out and we'll flip them and put them back in.
Do you have a question? Are they homeschooled?
No, so my 3 older ones, they go to public school. My background is in education. I've actually doctored in education from Vanderbilt, and I believe great and good homeschool or a good public school is great for kids. My 2 little ones are home with us. I was a teacher for many years. Let me get my timer off. And then when I had my 4th one, I decided to stay home with him and work from home and do some educational consulting that way. And I've really been enjoying my time with him. But for my first, I would say for my first 3 kids, they went to the school that I worked at until they went off to public school. I worked at a lab school at a university that worked with children with disabilities, and as well as worked with like graduate and undergrad students and how for them to teach kids with disabilities. And I really love that. Whoop. Well, it looks like you got a prize, dog. Okay, we're gonna pop these back in here. And we're gonna bake again for another 7.5 minutes. They need about 15 minutes, give or take, or and they'll be done. You'll know when they're done. When they're crispy, they'll be a little soft, but once you take them out and they cool for about 5 minutes, they kind of harden up. Okay, we've got our tomatoes simmering. We're gonna make our dressing real quick, then we'll saute up our chicken, and we will be almost done. Okay, so we're gonna make a creamy Italian dressing. So we're gonna use a mayonnaise base for our Italian dressing, and you need about a 1/2 cup. So I'm gonna just scoop it in here. This is a salad shaker, which is really nice for when you wanna make homemade dressings. So I can just use my measurements on there for it. So we're gonna use about a 1/2 cup of mayo. And then we are going to add in some fresh garlic. You will need about 2 cloves of fresh garlic or a teaspoon. So I'm gonna grab about a teaspoon of fresh garlic. And then we need about 2 tablespoons of honey. Again, I like to eyeball things, especially sticky ingredients like honey. It's just easier to eyeball because if you try to pour it in a measuring thing and then the next thing, it just sticks to everything. So 2 tablespoons of honey. And then I've got juice from a fresh lemon. It's gonna be about a tablespoon of fresh lemon. I'm just gonna get my juicer out real quick. Get any seeds. I feel like lemons nowadays have so many seeds in them. And we want about 2 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice, which depending on your lemon can be about 1/2 of a lemon. If your lemon is more of a drier one, then you might need a whole one. But you want to use fresh lemon juice. You don't want to use like that true lemon that always has such a chemically taste to it. The fresh lemon juice is really what's going to shine in this homemade dressing. So we've got our fresh lemon juice in here, and then I'm going to be using balsamic vinegar, but like a red wine vinegar or white wine vinegar also works well. You'll need about a kind of like a 2 tablespoons to a 1/4 of a cup. I'm just going to eyeball it in here. There we go. And then we're going to add in our herbs. So we're going to put in about, I'm going to use the rest of this, but about a teaspoon of fresh or dried thyme. And we're need to go spice shopping. A teaspoon of basil. Again, we'll use the rest of this one as well. And there's my oregano right over here. We're gonna use a teaspoon of dried oregano. And again, I'm just eyeballing everything. Oops, I missed that one, so I'm gonna add a little bit more, perfect. And about a half a teaspoon of black pepper. And we need a little bit of salt. We're gonna add about, mayo already has a lot of salt in it, so you don't need too much. So about a teaspoon of garlic salt, give you a little nice flavor. And then I have some fresh parsley that I'm gonna just give a quick rinse to, and then I'll chop it up and get some of these leaves out. You could use dried parsley too, but I had some fresh ones, so I love fresh parsley.
You have a question. Will the recipes be available later?
Yes.
Or do you post the live, or go ahead.
Yeah, we post the live. After this, it takes, we have to wait for it to upload and everything, but we'll post the live on our link and through our page. And then we do recipe cards, but it always takes me a couple days to get them out, just because I do have kind of a crazy life with 5 kids. But yes, we do try to post all of that. We do get the videos posted up, especially on the link through our page, within a couple hours of doing it. That way you can always reference those. And I do try to get the recipe cards out as quickly as I can. Okay, so we're gonna put our fresh parsley in here. And let me find the lid right here. And we're gonna give this a little shake. But while we're giving this a little shake, I'm gonna put a little oil. Oh, I forgot. I knew it. I forgot to put a little oil in. We need about 1/4 of a cup of olive oil in here. Wasn't thinking. For some reason, there we go. So there we go. And I'm gonna put some in here to saute my chicken up, and I'm gonna turn it up as well. I'm using about a tablespoon of olive oil in here, mainly because I have a really big pan. That's the way I can cook all of my chicken at one time. But if you have a smaller pan, you can use a little bit less. And now, we're gonna give it a little shake. Go. And the beauty of this, if you have one of these little salad things, or you could do it in a mason jar, is you can just keep it in there and you pop it in your fridge, and it will last you until it's done. Perfect. So we've got our lovely creamy Italian dressing. You could also throw in Parmesan cheese with it, but I'm going to be throwing Parmesan cheese in our salad, so we don't need to do that. But here you see it's got a lovely rich color. If you were to use a white wine vinaigrette, it would be a lighter color, but the balsamic gives it a darker color, but similar flavor profile. Okay, let's get our chicken ready. And we have our chicken breast that we marinated with Worcestershire sauce and a little garlic salt and some Mrs. Dashes. And we're gonna saute this on our skillet once our oil is nice and hot. I am using a non-stick hex-clad pan. It works great. If you're in the business of getting a new pan, I do love hex-clad. I made the transition about 2 years ago, and I have yet to scratch a single one of mine. They are more expensive, but so far they've been worth the money. And then I'm gonna lay this chicken out, but I don't want it to I wanna give it space to breathe, so that they're not on top of each other, because I want them to get a nice brown kind of crusting on it. So when you are searing up your meat and you want to get that nice brown color on it, don't overcrowd your pan. Try to give them space, because the natural liquid will prevent that searing. So I'm going to put it in here. We'll let it cook for about a minute or so before we toss to kind of get that lovely brown crust. Okay, well, let's prep our salad over here. I think we are all done with this. Before we do that, I hear our oven going off. So let's grab our croutons. these out. Beautiful. They've got a nice golden crisp to it. You can see how they're moving. You can tell they're nice and crunchy. I'm gonna bring my trivet over here. We'll place this right there. So those are our sourdough croutons. And now I'm using, this is the pan that I tossed our croutons in, so it has a little bit of oil in it, which will be great because the secret to like a great restaurant salad is they always toss their lettuce with a little bit of oil and salt before they actually dress it with their dressing. It just helps it kind of stick to the lettuce a little better. So we've got a bag of our salad, and then I'm gonna give it just a light drizzle of olive oil, like a teaspoon. You don't need much. And then a pinch of salt. And this just giving this pre-coat to your lettuce just allows the salad dressing to stick on a little more. So just a pinch of salt. You don't need much. And then I'll take my tongs here. We're gonna just give it a nice toss. And you kind of want to coat them until they're all a little bit shiny. This helps give you that restaurant style, you know, like salad. I just feel like restaurant salads always taste so much better than anything that you can make at home. And I was watching a show once and they said, just coat it in a little bit of oil and salt before you do the dressing and it will be just so much better. Okay, so we've got our lettuce. Let me get our chicken turned real quick. Beautiful. So here we've got this nice browning on it. Get it all flipped over. That's going to give you that really good kind of crunch on it while keeping your chicken tender. It's, you know, you want to cook it at high heat, not in a crowded saute pan, because if you crowd it, all of the natural juices from the chicken will prevent your crust from forming. Beautiful. And these will be done in about another minute. Perfect. Get these all flipped over. Like, I love doing grilled salads in the summer, you know, on the grill outside, but this one's pretty good. It gives you that nice, delicious thing. Okay, let's throw in a handful or so of cherry tomatoes.
Yeah, a question. What temperature on the chicken?
I am cooking them on like almost an 8. So it's a medium high, 10 being the highest. So it's a little more than 7, but not quite an 8. So, and I waited till my pan got, with the oil in it, got nice and hot so that it would sizzle right away and cook. If your pan is cold, you're not gonna get that nice browning crust on it. And then we're gonna add about a 1/3 cup of Parmesan cheese in here. Beautiful. We're gonna give this all a quick toss. And then I'm gonna start with my dressing. And we're gonna give this a lovely toss. And you see with the oil on it, it just coats it and sticks to it a lot nicer. So we have our beautiful salad that we will then plate with the chicken here in just a second. Let's see how it's going. And then we're gonna just blend up our soup and then we'll be done. Perfect. These all look about done. Excellent. Okay, now with our thing, I'm gonna turn my soup down to low. And then working in batches, I'm gonna blend it and puree it to make our creamy tomato basil soup. And you could use a food processor for this, or if you had a really big blender, you could do this, but about 2 batches in this, and I've got it all blended up to make my soup. We'll go over here, blend it real quick. And then I just pour it right back in here. And this is gonna be the base for our creamy tomato soup. I don't add cream to my tomato soup. So it's creamy because it just, when you blend it, it gives it that nice velvety texture. So it's actually really healthy and full of flavor. Now, if you are a fan of adding cream, you could add probably, you know, 1/4 of a cup up to 1/2 a cup if you wanted to. Just wait until the very end to do it. Otherwise, your cream will curdle, especially in the acid. Beautiful. So I'm gonna pull those off. Our chicken is done. We've got that lovely brown crust on it. And then I'm gonna blend this and we will be ready to plate in just 1 second. Get my lid on and we're gonna blend. Yeah, I did not put my lid on tight enough. That's okay. Let me get my towel here. And we're gonna pour it in and then there we go. And we'll pour that in and we'll be ready to serve up. So beautiful. You see how it's nice and thick and creamy. It's just a perfect soup that will be great with the croutons and our salad. So let's plate up our lunch. Okay. Let's start we're gonna put our salad on here. So we've got our lovely salad. And then we're gonna put on some chicken right on the top. And then put this down here so it's a little heavy. Now we're gonna do our creamy tomato basil soup. It smells delicious. And then we are going to top both off with our croutons. So we'll bring this right over here. And it's gonna use in, we've got our sourdough croutons. And then I'm gonna find some of the big ones and we'll top off our soup with our beautiful croutons. Well, guys, this is our lunch today. We have our yummy creamy Italian salad with grilled or sauteed chicken and creamy tomato basil soup. Super simple, great way to use up our extra sourdough. My friends, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for joining us. Feel free to comment or send us a message if you have any cooking questions or any recipes you would like to see. Again, thank you so much for joining us here today.